Well, Canadian authorities say they have foiled what they call an al-Qaeda-linked terrorist attack. Now, the terror plot, they say, was to attack a major North American transportation route. The alleged suspects are said to have been under surveillance for over a year. Now, the two are charged with plotting to derail a passenger train. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police in Ontario says they had been seen watching trains and railways in the Greater Toronto area, but no further evidence has been released so far. And in a press conference, police named the two accused as Chehab Esseqaira from Montreal and Ryan Jusser from Toronto. Now, the Canadian police claim the two suspects had links to al-Qaeda elements inside of Iran, this despite Tehran's repeated condemnation of al-Qaeda as a terrorist group. Switching over to Calgary, joined by Press TV's correspondent Joshua Blakeney. Hi, Joshua. Please give us an update on this situation, exactly what's going on and what evidence do they have, if any, if you know of, that prove that this was actually an attempt at terrorism.
Hi, Marzia. Yes, I think you summarized it pretty well there in your preamble. There was very little evidence produced at this police media conference that they gave earlier. In fact, when pushed for evidence by journalists, they were unable and unwilling to speak about it. The nearest thing they came to evidence to buttress their assertion that these two accused were trying to derail a train and commit an act of terrorism was that they were seen watching trains, which is hardly something that can be used as an indictment and to demonstrate that this is part of a kind of global conspiracy of al-Qaeda jihadists. But then came the bombshell when one member of the police force said that this was linked to al-Qaeda elements in Iran. And I think many people would look at that and say that's a propaganda phrase that some Zionist agent in the Canadian establishment has inserted into that report in order to sustain the war on terrorist mythology, sustain the claims of the Canadian government that Iran poses some kind of threat to ordinary Canadians, that Iran wants to blow up trains full of Canadians, because obviously the Canadian establishment is funneling billions of taxpayer dollars into counter-terrorism measures at a time when, on the other hand, they're asking Canadians to swallow austerity measures and do with less decent health care, no free education, no welfare for the poor, no free school lunches. And so on the one hand, they need to they want to funnel taxpayer money into counter-terrorism measures, and on the other, cut the social safety net in Canada. And to do so, they stage these bonanzas. They have been proven that the intelligence agents in North America, as your previous report indicated, to be participating in false flag incidents. Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting. If you think about the claim of al-Qaeda in Iran, well, the West is known to be siding with al-Qaeda in Syria. And if anyone watches the videos of those individuals in Syria who are taking up arms against the Syrian government, they're constantly fulminating and rambling against the Iranian government. And so presumably, if this was al-Qaeda in Iran, these would be the adversaries of the Iranian government. So in that sense, it would be a common enemy of the Canadian state and of the Iranian state. So it's not like, there's any evidence to support the claim that the Iranian government is somehow involved with al-Qaeda elements, when the Iranian government is constantly denouncing al-Qaeda and criticizing it, which is why we see on those videos in Syria, for example, those al-Qaeda elements constantly chastising the Iranian revolution. And so, right. Obviously, I think many people in North America have this default skepticism now, this default position of saying, when we see these bonanzas and we see phrases like al-Qaeda and Iran being thrown around, that this is some kind of a staged event.
Well, Joshua, you're saying that many people have that skepticism, but many analysts are saying that these acts, for example, what has just taken place in the United States or this particular situation now in Canada, is actually used to make sure that that level of stress never really decreases in these people in North America, that there's always a certain level of fear just high enough that almost the most outrageous story would be accepted by them because of a sense of being not secure.
Yes, that's accurate. I mean, in Canada, you're more likely to die from lightning or in the bathtub than to die from terrorism. And so you have this problem from the perspective of the authorities. They want to spend billions of taxpayer dollars waging wars abroad. Imagine if you're a parent of a Canadian soldier who's died in Afghanistan, and yet you're then finding out that you're more likely to die from lightning than terrorism in Canada. You're not going to be very pleased. And so it could be that these two individuals were obscurantists, people willing to use violence against Canadian civilians. But whenever such people exist, it's well known that the intelligence agencies treat them as assets, not as adversaries, that when they do find someone who is crazy enough to use violence, that they nurture them and adopt them as strategic assets in order to sustain particular political policies. And it's well known in Canada, we have this great Zionist presence here, and they want to demonize the Islamic world. They want to reorder the Middle East and to use Canadian military might to do that. To send
all right. Well,
Canadian
thank you, Joshua. I appreciate it. We're out of time. Joshua Blakeney, Press Correspondent in Calgary.